Hi everyone, welcome to this week's tutorial. So this week I thought it'd be a good opportunity to paint a female face. With the Sisters of Battle coming out really soon, it's a good opportunity for us to get this one done as well. We've done some other how to paint faces tutorials, but we've not done female faces yet, so I thought that we can tackle this today. So I guess the general things to keep in mind is subtlety is really important. So I've seen some female faces painted on miniatures where they're quite harsh and the shadows are over exaggerated, and if you look at the head we're going to paint today, it's so soft there's hardly any sort of line sculpted into it apart from the main features with the eyes, the nose and the mouth. So we have to keep it really subtle and try and follow the contours of the sculpt really, just so it stays true, because if you overshade or over highlight, this feminine face can become quite masculine and we don't want to destroy any of that. So what we'll do is we'll start in just a second and we'll go through the process. Okay, so let's get started with the painting now. So you'll notice here I've got the head separate from the body and I've actually undercoated it with Corax white. So if you're going to be painting your Sisters of Battle in black armour, like many of you probably will, or even any of the other colours really, it's best to paint the head separate. They're separate pieces, so it's easy to do, and you can actually undercoat them. I would do either grey or white like this, or even the Wraithbone spray would work. It's because we're going to be the face is going to be quite pale and the hair's white as well, so it makes sense to do this over a light undercoat. So we're just going to get cracking with that. So, and if you want the heads in whilst you're playing with them, I'd just blue tack them in, or just something like that for now until you get them painted, but definitely paint them separately. So we're going to be starting with Kislev Flesh. So I'm thinning that down on the palette now. Just show you real quick. I've got all of my colours ready. So Kislev Flesh. Starting quite pale, what we're going to do is we're going to use regular paints, so no contrast paints or anything like that, just for this tutorial. So I'm going to be going Kislev Flesh just over the face. So starting pale, we're going to work down and keep it subtle. This paint's very thin, so we don't want it thick. The worst thing we can do here is destroy any of this sculpted detail we've got. These faces are so subtle. Got to be very careful with how much paint you apply now. So just moving your brush around. Don't let it collect into the recesses too much. Just make sure all of the skin is covered. So we're really just putting a bit of a wash over the face really, just to get a bit of colour on it. So what I'll do, that'll dry, I'll do another coat over that just so we've got a bit of a solid base coat, and then we'll come back. Okay, so we've got a couple of layers of Kislev Flesh on there now. Just keeping it thin so there's none of that sculpted detail destroyed. So we're just going to thin down some Cadian Flesh Tone now on the palette. This is about 50-50 with water. And we're just going to start adding a bit of shading. Just get that right consistency. So I'm not going to be worried too much about going onto the hair at the minute because we're going to be painting it out. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go around the hairline, just drop in some of that Cadian Flesh Tone around the face, just to give it some depth where it meets the hair. So don't worry about going onto the hair, we'll paint that out later. So really you're thinning down your paints into wash consistency really for this. So painting female faces, you have to take quite a different approach to painting regular faces, male faces or monsters or anything like that. So we've just got that around the edge first. And then we're just going to go and drop some around the eyes. Just around the nose slightly. Not too much. Around the mouth. You can see how subtle the sculpting is on this, so you've got to be very careful with it. So less is definitely more when it comes to painting feminine faces. And some of the Sisters of Battle faces have got harsher features sculpted onto them and things like that as well. So you can, change that. And obviously we're doing pale skin tones here. You can do a variety of different skin tones. I'll try and do some more in the future. So I'm leaving all of the Kislev flesh on the flat areas of the skin, and the cheekbones and things as well. So we're just going to keep building that up as we need to. Just adding a bit more colour in. So now dry and we'll come back in a second. Okay, so that's the Cadian flesh tone first shading done. So we're going to move on to some Bugman's Glow now. So this one's slightly, it's darker, but it's slightly pinkier as well. So it'll add a bit more colour into that skin. So we're just thinning that down again, creating, say, a wash consistency. You can do this with contrast paints as well if you want to, but we're just doing regular paints. And then we're going to basically do the same thing, go around the edge of the face first. What you want to do is where the hairline meets the face, meets the skin, you don't want a black line there separating it. You want the darkest colour of both surfaces, so it would be a dark grey for the skin, for the hair, next to the skin shade colour, and it will add a natural break between the two coloured surfaces. So we're going to go just around the face first. Hopefully trying to keep it in focus for you. Just letting it run into those recesses for us. And into those features at the face, around the eyes, mouth and nose. Just don't let it pull too much. There's hardly any paint on the brush here. It's just a small amount on the end. That's all we need. I'll probably just put a little small amount underneath the cheek there. So you can see the shading starting to come on now a little bit. You don't need a lot. We'll let that dry and we'll carry on. Okay, so that's the Bugman's Glow stage done. That's all dry. So we'll go on to the Tuscaur Fur now. So once again, this is slightly darker in tone and a little bit more pinky, so it's got more colour in it. It's a nice shade for skin tone. So we'll make that into a wash consistency, but we'll focus on the deeper recesses now as we get darker with the stages. So just dropping it in to those deepest areas. Around the face first. So we don't need a lot. Just a small amount. Just around the eyes. Literally that's it, that's that stage finished. It's that quick, that's all you need. So you don't need a lot. There we go, I'll let that dry now. Okay, so moving on to the next stage now. So this is Doomball Brown. So it's a dark brown, dark and warm colour. So we're just going to drop that into the deepest areas real quick. Just around the eyes. We don't need a lot. To the mouth. So I don't know how well it's picking it up on camera, but I'll take a photograph again at the end so you can see the finished result properly. If you follow the stages, you should be fine. So what we'll do now is we'll leave the shading there for a bit and we'll do a few highlights. So it's that shade a little bit, highlight a little bit, and then shade a bit more and highlight a little bit more. It's that backwards and forwards technique that I like to do with the faces and stuff, so you get a good result. It's not too dark or too light. So I'll come back in a minute and we'll start doing some highlights. Okay, so we'll start putting some highlights on there now. So I've just done a mix on my palette, about 50-50 Kislev Flesh and Screaming Skull. Just making it slightly lighter in tone now. So keeping that very thin, just loading my brush up. You can see the consistency there, it's an umber brush, how thin it is. And we're just going to start glazing that over the flat areas of the face, avoiding the shading that we've just put on. Keeping it really subtle and soft. I know I keep saying it, but I can't emphasize enough how subtle you need to be dealing with these sort of faces. So really just being very gentle with the surface. Let it dry, do another layer. Let that dry, do another layer. Keep building it up. Working on the raised areas. Just keep going over until you're happy with this first stage highlight. I mean, if you're doing an army of these, it might be best just to undercoat it white and just get your contrast paint out, do a layer of your contrast paint skin tone, and then just say, yeah, job done. You know, but this is for, you know, character level or whatever else. Just showing how I might tackle it myself. So you'll notice I'm just keep going over the same areas, just building it up gradually. So blending it through so there's no jump in stages. So there we go, that's the highlight done. I'll come back in a second. Okay, so there's the first highlight stage done. So I've mentioned in other painting faces tutorials about how I use Ushabti Bone and Screaming Skull to highlight skin. It's a slightly yellow in tone, which is really nice, and it's a nice natural highlight for some skin tones. So I'm just thinning down some Screaming Skull now. I think if I was doing like a male, painting a male face, I'll probably use Ushabti Bone. Screaming Skull slightly lighter, and we're going for the slightly paler feminine face here. So just keeping that thin there, you can see consistency, it's very thin. And we're just going to be glazing in on the most raised areas now. Just focusing on the tops of the cheekbones. Just take some of that paint off, we've got quite a lot there. Do the same on the brow. And the nose. So we can keep building it up now on the cheekbones. You don't have to get the solid layer down straight away, just gradually keep going over until you're happy with the finish. So we don't want any harsh lines painted on the face. Just picking out some of the nose a little bit more now, up to that point where we can. Just down the sides of the nostrils. There's a scar on the cheek here, so we can start just picking that out slightly now. We've got a light enough colour. So there we go. Keep going there. You notice I keep going around the face until I'm happy with the finish we've got. Okay, I think I'm happy with that so far, so we'll come back in a minute and do another highlight. Okay, so I'm going to do another highlight here, so I'm just going to thin down some white quite a lot on the palette. And I'm not going to be too harsh with this, it's just really just to get an extra highlight on. We'll probably go back a bit later and define a little bit more. But I'm just going to put just a small amount on the very raised edges, very thin. It's hardly noticeable really, it's just add a bit more contrast on the face. See, against all the rest of the white undercoat, it's hard to balance the face currently, so what we'll do is we'll probably go back to it at the end, just give it a once over once the hair is painted and everything else is painted in. So I'm really just getting it sort of about the right tone that we want at the minute. So you can see what's going on now. So I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to paint out the hair and probably the neck area here, just so we can really see what's going on with the face a little bit more. Okay, so I've just blacked out the neck area here where the suit is, and I'm just going to go grab some Corax white base paint. So this is quite a new paint, but it's very good. I'm just going to apply that over the whole of the hair. So it's quite a strong paint as well, so you should be right with just a layer. Obviously we want to go around the face as well, so just be careful there. Paint out the hair area. So I'll do that and we'll come back once that's done. Okay, so I've painted all of the hair out with the Corax white, and then I'm just going to thin down some Administratum grey now on the palette, making that into a wash consistency. And I'm just going to start painting that into the recesses of the hair. We can be quite messy with this. Just get it on there. Let it run into any of those lines that are sculpted in. So the hair's going to be quite subtle as well, because it's not, we don't want to shade it too much because we want it to appear white. So if we shade it too much here, it could look grey. We want it to be quite nice and clean white. Keep your brush moving. That's the first one, it's quite a subtle shade, but there we go. Okay, so next stage then, I'm going to thin down some Dawnstone on the palette, create a wash with that. And we're going to do the same sort of thing that we've just done. So I'm going to really just place this into the deepest recesses on the hair. So sculpt it in. So rather than just washing it all over, I'm picking out those areas, and that will save us time later when we're layering back over the hair to highlight. So just picking out those ones. Down there. So we don't want to go too dark with this. Inside there next to the face. So this is where we want to be very careful now. So we're just shading in where the hair meets the skin. So we want that nice transition between those two surfaces. Basically just keep shading until you're happy with the amount you've got. As I say, don't do too much, you don't want it to turn out grey. There we go. Okay, so we're doing another quick shade now. So I've just mixed in a touch of black in with the Dawnstone on the palette, and I'm thinning that down as well. What I'm going to do with this, I'm literally just going to go around where the hairline meets the skin, just to separate those two surfaces. So it's not pure black, it's a dark grey, so hopefully it'll feel more natural. You've got to be very careful with this. Running it in, keeping the paint thin. Obviously, if there's some deep creases, or deep recesses, sorry, in the hair, get some of that in there as well. So you can see what we're doing now. Just paint a bit in where you need to on the hair as well. So I'll finish this shading off now. So this will be the last stage for that, and then we'll come back in a minute. Okay, so that's all the shading done on the hair now. So what I'm going to do is really quickly just go around the hair and just neaten up with some Corax white. It's where I didn't want the shading. So it shouldn't take long. Just paint out and neaten up. If you've got any tide marks from your paint, so you can see I've got a little bit there on the top. Painting that out. So just have a quick neaten up before we carry on with the last highlight stage. So we've got some definition into the hair now. You can see there's a nice break between the skin and the hairline, and there's a little bit of shading there. We don't want too much. So because we used Corax white, which is a slightly off-white, it allows us to do a highlight stage with pure white. So that's what I'm going to do now. And actually just thin that down. And we're going to, because the system about our hair is quite soft, I mean there's not lots of hair lines sculpted into it. There's more of a shape than anything. So we're actually going to just go around and paint in some of those lines just to give it some more texture. I don't know how much it's picking up on camera, but like I said, I'll take a photograph so you can see. So not only are we painting the sculpted lines, which we've got at the front here, we're painting extra ones in to emphasize the texture of the hair. You can keep going over that and focus that around the top of the head. It's almost like a halo around, following the lines that are sculpted. Just drawing your brush down from the top, and it'll give it a nice finish. And obviously highlight over these sculpted lines in as well. So I'm going to highlight the hair, focusing around the top. Highlight a little bit of highlights around the bottom as well, where it's needed. We don't need a lot, so I'll finish this off now. Okay, so that's all the hair highlighted now. So before I go back to the face, I'm going to add a little bit more shading into some of the features of the face. So I'm just going to mix a little bit, just a tiny amount of black in with some Doom Brown on the palette. So I really want to get some definition around the eyes now before I go and highlight. So do a bit more shading before I highlight. I'm just going to get that mix on there and just drop it around the eyes. Really subtle. So this is very thin as well. Go into the mouth. We'll keep applying it as much as we need to. Might just drop a tiny amount under the nose as well. Just getting that definition in. Just keep going. Okay, so that's that done, and then we'll do some highlighting now. So we'll go straight onto that. So going back to the white. I'm going to be a bit more considered with the highlights now. So really I'm just going the top to the brow. There is a slight expression on this face, so I'm going to try and pick that out a little bit. So I'm just exaggerating slightly what's there now. It's quite stressful painting these sort of faces because they're so soft. One mistake and can really ruin what's going on. So yeah, just take your time with it. Yeah, we'll come back in a minute. Okay, so that's that highlight done now. So at this point I'm going to paint the eyes. So this is always the fun bit. So I'm just going to make a dark mix again of black and Doom Ball. So not pure black. Basically we're going to paint out the eye completely. Ready for painting in the eyeball. So it's not, like I said, it's not pure black, so it feels a bit more natural. I've got more to do on the face, but I thought this was a good point to paint the eyes. Okay. Okay, so I've blacked out the eyeballs now, so you're just going to take pure white and paint in the eyes. So I think it goes without saying now, this is what you've got to be as neat as you can. Keep your paint thin. Use a good brush. Test it first. Make sure your paint's flowing okay. And gently paint out the eyeballs. I'll do that on both of them. I'm going to go away and do this because this is way too stressful on camera, and I'll come back and then we'll finish off the eyes. Okay, so that's the eyeballs painted in. So the idea is basically just to leave some of that dark mix around the eyeball. Just adds the definition, because it gives the impression of eyelashes as well, if you leave that there. And then we're just going to take some black, thin that down. Just a small amount. And we're going to dot in pupils. So, as I mentioned before in the other painting faces tutorials, when you do your pupil, you want it to meet the top and the bottom of the eyeball, or else your miniature will look scared or startled. So basically you're almost doing a line from top to bottom. So just make sure that it meets the top and the bottom, and you'll end up with a realistic expression. Okay. Oh, that was lucky. Okay, cool, we'll come back in a second. Okay, so the eyes are done. That was stressful, and now we're going to do add a little bit of colour to the face and add a bit of fun. So first thing we'll do is we'll add some colour to the lips. So I'm just going to thin down some corn red on the palette. Adding more to that now. And we're just going to paint that onto the bottom lip to begin with. Following the shape of the lip. I'm also going to do the same on the top lip. Now, when you're painting male faces, you'll only ever tend to do the bottom lip, but with female faces, the top lip is actually sculpted on a bit more prominently, and this allows you to paint that top lip as well. Not too much, you don't want it to look silly, so just a little bit of red on there. So this miniature was sculpted based off Cole Kopinski's artwork, so I was just referencing against the colour that he's put on there really, so there is colour on the lips. Obviously it adds to the reinforcing that we're painting a feminine face as well. You don't have to do this on yours if you don't want to. I think it works quite well. So just keep building it up as you need to. You don't want too much. You can emphasize the shape of the mouth a little bit more with this. So then what I'll do is I'll just mix in a touch of Screaming Skull, because I've got it on the palette, in with the corn red. That'll make it like a pink colour. And we'll just paint that onto the bottom lip. So a light highlight. What I like to do with those is also just add a little bit of white in for that, so it'll make a very light colour. The bottom lips, you can add like a little reflection point onto them, so that looks quite nice sometimes as well. I think we'll just add one of those on. It's really subtle. Just there. That's all that's needed. Okay, so that's the mouth done. So I'm just going to use a little bit of corn red and black mix. Just a touch of black. I'm just going to run that into the scar that's on the side of the face. It doesn't look like it's a fresh scar or anything, so I'm just going to add a bit of colour onto it. It's very shallow as well. So we don't want to make it look too bad. Just going to pick it out slightly. You can see that there. I think a lot of the new Sisters of Battle have got scars and things like that, so you can have some fun with those. Okay. So I'll carry on now. So you can leave it like that if you want and say, yeah, it's done. But sometimes, like when we did the male how to paint faces, we added some blue around the eyes just to draw attention to the eyes. It adds depth as well. So you can do a similar thing with this. What I like to do is, because we've got like warm colour on the lips and the scar as well, but normally the lips, you know, we do the red lips. I like to use a contrasting colour, so I've just thinned down a little bit of Sotek green, because it's a nice contrast. It's a cool sort of turquoise colour, and I'm just thinning that down on my palette, and I'm going to add in just a touch of Kislev flesh, because that's the skin tone, so it's going to make it feel a little bit more natural. So Sotek green, a touch of Kislev flesh. I'm turning that into sort of wash consistency. So this is the colour we've got now. You can see that. And I'm going to be placing this on the eyelids as carefully as I can. So we don't need a lot. Just try and get a good angle for you guys to see. Just underneath. And say less is more with this. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. You don't have to use this colour if you don't want to. But what it does is, so the face is the first thing people look at on a miniature, and then it's the eyes on the face that they look at next. So drawing attention to those is really important. So by adding this turquoise green colour just on the top, underneath the brow, really draws attention to the eyes. And adds something else to the face. Quite nice. And just mixing your skin tone with whatever colour you use so it feels natural. And you could use the purple or the red if you wanted to as well. Got that. And then the last thing which we can do is, so I get often asked by people why we don't paint eyebrows on miniatures. I don't really know why. It's just a weird one. I think that a lot of miniatures, especially male miniatures, they look strange with eyebrows on, especially if they're painted on in a weird way. But with female faces, it works very well. So making that mix now. So we're using Doombull and black. So I've tried doing this a few times on a few miniatures, and it only ever really works. So don't paint on the brow, paint just underneath the brow. So don't use pure black. So it's a dark brown mix. And if you have to be neat painting the eyes, you've got to be insanely neat doing this. And very thin as well. So I'm going to finish these off and we'll come back. Okay, so we've got some eyebrows in there as well now. I think the reason I added the colour onto the eyes as well is I'm showing you how to paint female faces. Well, obviously on a Sister of Battle, so not all Sisters of Battle, or not any of them would use the eye makeup thing, but it might be nice if you use it on other females, like let's say you're painting some witch elves. That would look really cool on them, but I thought I'd show you on here as well. You can do it on your Sisters of Battle if you want to, they're your miniatures. So I think we're pretty much done. I thought the last thing I'm going to show you is if I just get a touch of Screamer Pink and mix in just a touch of Kislev Flesh with that. That makes a natural colour. So once again on female faces this works really well. So we're making like a natural pink colour. Mix right on the palette, not too much on my brush. Like a pinky colour going on. And you glaze that not on the cheek, underneath the cheek here. Let's get it in focus for you if I can. Just really subtle. Place it underneath there. Dry. I don't think we can get it on the outside because of the scars there. Obviously it helps if you haven't got that. You don't need a lot, just a small amount. It just adds a bit of colour into the cheek as well. It just reinforces you've got a feminine face. So it helps with that. Well, like I say, these techniques work on any female faces. You don't have to do the makeup stage, or you can have more of it if you want to. It really does depend on what you're painting. And I think we're going to call that done now. So, just a recap then. So, I'd say the face is done. You've got to be really subtle. You minimal paint. You saw the stages we went through. Reinforce the femininity as much as you want with makeup, things like that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, keep your paint thin as well. And yeah, hopefully you found it useful. And hopefully you guys will enjoy painting Sisters of Battle when you get hold of some as well. So there we go, that's that tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a photo so you guys can see the finished face in a photograph as well, which always comes out better. Thank you. See ya. So there we go, there's the finished face on screen now, guys. So that's a photograph, so hopefully it's picking up a little bit better on there what we did rather than on the video. You can see the subtlety that we added in with the shading and the highlighting, and the hair as well. You can see what we did there with that. It's coming out a lot better in the photo. And the colour that we added in around the eyes, and you can add more if you want to, and all the colour on the lips as well. So, and I'll see you in the next tutorial then, guys, and hopefully you'll give it a go. See ya, bye.